enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm going to have Pam get up and say a few words, but there's really, she can talk as long as she wants, because this is a very important decision. This is a decision that covers...
In 1860, American slaves, as a financial asset, were worth approximately $3.5 billion. That's just as property. Today's dollars, that would be approximately $75 billion. In 1860, slaves as an asset were worth more than all of America's manufacturing, all of the railroads, all of the productive capacity of the United States put together. Slaves were the single largest financial asset of property in the entire American economy. The only thing worth more than the slaves was the land itself. And no one can really put a dollar value on all of the land of North America.
African Americans built this nation. You were such a massive part of it. Bigger than you were given credit for. Does that make sense?
The Shift Report.
One's in the chat if y'all can hear me okay. One's in the chat if y'all can hear me okay.
The Shift Report with the Hood Mystic, where shift happens.
Can y'all hear me out there? Can y'all hear me out there? All right, cool. I don't know what that was. I ain't do nothing but restart my computer. But anyways, what I was saying before we so rudely interrupted, you feel me? I seen this come through the pipeline, Trump. The thing that triggered me about what Trump said in his little speech, he was like, this was for the babies of slaves. And it just really kind of like sat with me, and I started to like I had this download before, but you know, everything is cyclical and it be always like shit going on. So in reference, I had this line in this song called Apocalypse where it was like, that's like my knife fighting for his rights, human contraband, carrying a concealed weapon, praying he get to heaven. You got to hear the insanity of millions of gods that don't know that they gods. They hide behind a squad so the hoes can applaud. Don't tell me I'm wrong. Don't tell me I'm right. I'm a beacon in the darkness of light. I'm a beacon in the darkness of night, just bringing the light. But what I said was, it's real crazy how we could be human contraband, human property, a tax write-off, but then also get arrested for carrying a gun, right? Like, how can a gun get arrested for carrying a gun? So at one level, they know that we are people, but legally, they see us as slaves. But when you say slaves, it's not that saying that you work in a field, although that might be possible. What they didn't really kind of center in on is the legality, which is encoded within the Constitution, that we are property. And of course, we know that we're not property. Of course, that we know that we have souls and lineages and families and past. But legally, we are no more than property. We are used as leverage. So when they repeal the 14th Amendment and it's for the children of slaves, I want to know, the reason I'm doing this video is because I would like to know, why did y'all have to put that in the Constitution in the first place? That a slave child would then become a citizen, because what was a slave child before the 14th Amendment? I know y'all don't hear me. I know y'all don't understand. I know you don't comprehend, because that is the viciousness of racism. You can't even properly process what has happened to us as a people legally, within law, within a paradigm of thought. Dred Scott tried to sue for his rights and was denied, because as a particular piece of property, you can't then levy lawsuits against an actual person. Silly boy. So let's get into the key characteristics of chattel slavery. By the way, my name is Kyrie, also known as the Hood Mystic. I'm an author, astrologer, father. I love history, spirituality, occultism, of course, astrology. I love bringing people together. I love building things, platforms, businesses, people, things of that nature. You know, I love life. I'm happy to be alive in this moment. I don't take it for granted. And I know, I've done my history, I've done my research, and the calamity of alchemizing a person into property, which is the low of the low. Because imagine you have a history, a lineage. You could have been an actual king. You could have been a king of a village, and then you would be enslaved and transferred into a number of property and assigned a job. And no matter what the job is, we are missing the point. The money that we make, we are missing the point. We have to recover and reclaim this identity that was been put on us and get into a deeper variation of our true identity. Even if it is in Africa, in Ghana, or Nigeria, you have to find that, because if you don't find that, if you accept shit how it is, nigga, you property. One's in the chat if that makes sense. Okay. And I'm not talking about literal slavery, because you don't have to work on a field to be legally classified as property. Because the moment they want to set trip on you or take your land, they can do it. Why? Because you're legally property. And it goes deeper into the mind. It goes deeper into the spirit. So within your mind and your spirit, you are property. Guess what? You're going to act out. You're going to be lost as a person. You're going to be trying to figure it out. You're going to justify your whole life by what you have, not who you are. You have lost who you are. And then they play in your face, oh, we're going to repeal the 14th Amendment. Great. Maybe we can get one step closer to who we actually are versus these labels and things that y'all place us under. So, because I'm trying to get to the gym before 3. Give me 1 second. I got to cut this timer off. All right. So, like I said, I'm trying to get to the gym by 3, so I don't want this to be long and drawn out. But I want people to start thinking, doing their research, and also invoking the ancestors into figuring out who you are for real outside of this black, Negro, colored shit, which is just legalese for property. Okay. African American property, black property. Okay. Period. That's instead of calling you property, they call you a Negro. Okay. Because you nothing in the history, there was never a Negro empire, a Negro civilization, a Negro group of people, a black empire, a black county or community. We are the empire of black. That never existed. Therefore, these are just keys and code words to get to the real fucking bottom line. You are property. What is property going to do? Want to buy fucking property. Want to have shit. Materialistic. It's spiritual more than it is anything. And I'm hoping that we can look at the reality of the constitution of this land so we can begin to understand the reason why our people are the way that they are. They don't really understand to have a soul in a lineage anything past of what they know. And slavery was fucked up, but what you'll see in this presentation is that the shit that they was doing after slavery was way fucking worse legally. That's when they put the fucking clamp down on you with the paperwork. That's when, because of course you gotta be realistic, right? Was every black person a slave? No. But did they turn every black person into a slave? Yes. How? Through the paperwork, through the legalese. This is why when black people get together, we more prone to have a party, have drinks, have a cookout, but we will not study law. And that and people going to suffer for lack of knowledge every time. Hosea chapter 4 verse 6. So during chattel slavery, individuals was treated as property. That's the baseline. And so it was free black people at the same time that there was enslaved black people. Okay? So don't you ever start to wonder, well, why is it this whole just lump it on slavery on all black people? Why they do that? Because they did it based upon the facts of the paperwork and the legalese, which we'll get into. And another thing that's very important, the paradigm of chattel slavery, the paradigm of reconstructionism, civil rights is race-based. Now, what's crazy about that? Race is a made-up construct. Why? But then why is it race-based and why is it color? Why is it like the one drop rule? Because the slavers, the male slavers, was having sex with the slave women, and then they was having babies. The only way that black people don't take over the whole shit is if they have lineage to the mother. Y'all not understanding because this shit is so deep. The father is the slaver, the slave owner. And if the father say, this is my child, then that child is actually get access to the actual land because that's his dad. And that's common law. That's common law. Y'all don't even understand what I'm saying. That's common law. In chattel slavery, they said, no, we're not following common law. We're going to follow the law of animals. Y'all, listen. They said, listen, since I own the cow is a girl, the bull is a guy. Since I own the cow, I get the children. Then did the same thing to black women and said, when you have a baby by me, that's your baby. That's not my baby. And this was a system that got incorporated into law. What type of people, what type of moral deprivation do you have to sit with and go through to then create a system so therefore you could basically have as many kids as you want to and they will have no inheritance? So if I was a lawyer, I would fight for the repealing of the 14th Amendment, okay? And say, if I have any European blood, I deserve reparations. Not literally under common law, I do. And what do they say that makes black people different from all other black people? Well, not at this point, but in general, they say, "Oh yeah, y'all got a little white in you because the slave master was having sex with the slave woman. Y'all all got a little." That means if we all got a little bit of white in us under common law, we got access to the plantation. It's basic shit right now. But when you talk about reparations and black people, why haven't we got reparations? And the Holocaust survivors have got reparations, and the Japanese have got reparations. Well, they see them as people, as persons. Why would they have to give reparations to property? You have no legal right as property. And if you haven't changed your status, guess what you still are? You're not a legal person. They were treated as commodities with their rights, autonomy, and identity stripped away. So whoever we were have gotten stripped away through paper genocide. Complete paper genocide for now at a total of 40 million and growing of melanated people within this paradigm have no idea of who they are. And it's the most important part of the support of chattel slavery, because we always look at the slave movies and we see the grotesqueness of working on a plantation and picking cotton. But that wasn't the most grotesque part. The most grotesque part was the laws that supported the environment. The laws that said if a person runs away, he is going to be returned, because that is just a person retrieving their property. The Constitution, where they have it within the space of labeling things property, knowing that they're talking about people. So when you look at this government and you look at the fucking Supreme Court and the Congress, how could you not know this? You have to know everything that I'm saying to be true. The only thing is, just don't tell black people what it really is and how it's really going down. Have them make money, buy shit, and die. So when you're trying to talk spiritual development, growth, humanity, black people don't give a shit. We talk about 90% of niggas that just don't give a fuck. And you can't reach them because of these laws and systems of racism within encoded in the systems that bring about a specific psychology. One of the major psychologies within a constitutional compromise, within the Constitution, within the foundation, within the fabrics of the creation of this, I said this company, because that's what this country is, a goddamn company, a damn business for which you are its greatest asset, a very smart pet.
Well, realization that the Negro is a human being like anyone else.
Mr. Hasty, what did you think we were before you began to think of us as human beings?
Well, realization that the Negro is a human being like anyone else.
Mr. Hasty, what did you think we were before you began to think of us as human beings?
Well, in a way, we thought of you almost as a very superior pet. Something, or rather someone, we had to take care of. Because we had to do so much of their thinking for them. We had to do almost everything for them except living their own lives. Anything outside, we had to do for them.
Mrs. Lionel Legg.
A very smart pet. So let's get into the reason why, right? The 3/5 compromise. And then this also had me to thinking, like, shit, these people can do all of this shit for votes. Like now, the repealing of the 14th Amendment, which would, in essence, if I'm understanding this correctly, it would stop migrants from having children and becoming citizens and turning into voters of the Democrat Party. Meaning that if the migrants didn't vote blue, Donald Trump would not be repealing the 14th Amendment. In a space to get as many migrants into the country to become voters, they hoping and wishing that they vote a particular way. And I'm thinking, like, damn, for people's lives, that's crazy. And then the 3/5 compromise, in essence, is the same thing. The South want it both ways. They want niggas to be property, but they also want to count them as population so they can have representatives in the House, more representatives in the House, so they can get more laws that constitute the modality of chattel slavery. Because it's all slavery. The North just want to do slavery of the mind, have you work in a factory. Down south, they just want you to, be slave over your body, have you working in the field. Same slavery. And at the same time, when you check a box, you don't have the option of checking Moorish. You don't have the option of checking Atlantean or what specific tribe from Africa you were from, or Caribbean island you were from, or South America, North America, Central America, where your ancestors possibly were from. You can't check Olmec. You can check African American. So the paradigm is slavery. And within the African American box that you check, you are now inserting that you are 3/5 of a human being. We can count you as 3/5 of a person because you don't have autonomy and you don't have knowledge of self, but you can do everything else. You can go to Walmart and buy shit. You can buy a house. You can start a business, but you still don't know who you are. And you have no legacy. You are 3/5, and we're gonna count you as such. Now, people will tell you things have changed. Things have changed so much that they're not even gonna tell you the history of the race that they placed you under. Why did things have to change? Change from what? Things have gotten better. Well, how was they? Do you know? Have you ever heard of the concept of the nadir of African American and European relations within this country? The nadir. What is the nadir? The lowest point. Do you know the lowest point? The lowest point of African American and European contact was not slavery. That wasn't the lowest point. It was post Reconstruction up into the 1920s. You never hear about that point in time in history. The next time you hear about niggas is in 1920 during the Harlem Renaissance. Niggas just spawn out of nowhere. You ain't never even heard of a nigga in 1910 doing nothing. It was some, right? Don't get me wrong. And it was this ideology that black people are improving, things are getting greater. But when you look at it in history's context, it's called the nadir. I didn't even make that up. That's a literal word and a term. That is the lowest point. What was going on and why was it going on? Because during that time, you was still property. And then in the 1920s, they said, oh, we can convert this property into more money through their artistic expression. We done beat these people down so much that they are making beautiful music. You hear this shit? Louis Armstrong, get on this goddamn trumpet. This nigga's amazing. So the Fugitive Slave Clause, which is a part of the U.S. Constitution, they had to legally prioritize putting their foot up your ass. Like a bunch of people coming together and creating specific scripts and legalese and terms and conditions so they could be justified in kicking your ass. You got to understand the psychology of these people is crazy. At what point have you ever thought, let me organize paperwork and legalities and structures and mandates just so this people can oppress another person? See, your mind can't even think like that. It's foreign to you to even think in that kind of way. Because what they will say when you reference slavery is, oh yeah, white people were slaves too. Slavery have existed for millions of years before. Yeah, okay, cool. We're not talking about slavery. We talking about the paper trail of removing your personage and creating a vessel of a person and labeling it as property. Let it be slavery if that's what we're going to do. But that person is a slave. Cool. But that person is slave so much that they no longer a person. Crazy. Because if you, and within your heart and your mind, you thinking and feeling and you want to be something and do something, you And the thing about slavery, if you a man, or racism, if you a man, is targeting your ass. Because when you talk about the chain gang, there's a bunch of niggas. When you talk about lynchings and buck breaking, get your strongest man and break them down in front of everybody. Psychological warfare, because they know that you a person. They know that you willing to revolt. They know that you willing to uprise. So they have to psychologically break you at every single turn. And then us now trying to just live and grow, we don't even know the type of people that's around us. When you a black person and you be like, all right, I got me some money, I'm gonna move to a nice neighborhood. Part of waking up is moving to Detroit or Atlanta or Memphis. You'd be like, yeah, I can't stand black people. Black people is this, that, and the third. Okay, you got it. Nothing more to say here. Nothing more to say here. You cool. Part of waking up is surrounding yourself with your people. Part of waking up is feeling safe around your people. That's part of waking up. Part of waking up is seeing the deficiency in the people across from you. The deep deficiency in the reality that we ain't never gonna come together and create nothing worth having. That's part of waking up. Cause you can and waking up is levels to it, right? Because you can wake up to a point where you feel isolated from black people because you're not connecting a dot that these people still feel like property. They still don't have their soul yet. They still traumatized. Or they haven't been traumatized enough. They haven't been pressed enough to create the fruit. A lot of this shit goes under the radar because niggas is old too comfortable. Niggas is old, like niggas got a car and an apartment, and whew, the years pass you by. But if you want to show up with a Ankh or show up with a Fez or want to learn about upgrading your status, then you are labeled as a fool. If you want to connect with Hebrew Israelites, you are labeled as a terrorist, as a murderer. You got to start to understand why. When you start to understand why, the things that happen is going to make more sense. And if we don't get to this particular point of consciousness, am I property or am I a person? If I'm a person, that means I have a legacy. If I have a legacy, that means I have to find it. If nobody's going to tell me, that means I have to go deeper within my meditation. I have to. Because if I don't know who I am and I don't know where I come from, I don't know where I'm going. And then I'm going to use everything as a fucking filler. My relationships, my career, all of these things are just feel good fillers for shit that, would really be knowing who you are at the deepest level. So the clause was a key element in the compromises made to establish the Union, recognizing different views on slavery in the North and the South. It essentially gave enslavers a constitutional right to recover their property, even if they fled to a state where slavery is illegal. Now, when I was doing my I did a mound ritual in like 2018, where I started off in Marietta. I started off in Marietta, Ohio, and ended up in St. Louis. But I traversed the Ohio River, which is the southern border of Ohio. And so of course Marietta is going to be the southeastern corner of Ohio, and you're going to just traverse. And we just went along the route. Like it was like the GPS was tripping, like, it's a quicker way to get to where you going. We like, no, we specifically traveled the Ohio River, and eventually you get to Cincinnati. And along the way to Cincinnati, probably like an hour away, I just started getting this like, I don't know where it came from, but I knew the story and I understood the story. It was Margaret Garner. And the irony was that I was driving into Cincinnati. So for that hour, I think I listened to a podcast about the story. And then I went straight to her landmark, which is actually in Kentucky. But, if you ever been to Cincinnati, you could just basically skip to Kentucky. Like Kentucky and Cincinnati is just like right there because it's right on the border of Ohio and Kentucky. But anyways, Margaret Gardner, her name was Peggy, was an enslaved African American woman who killed her own daughter and intended to kill her other 3 children herself rather than be forced back into slavery. Once again, what and this story, even Oprah, like it was a movie called Beloved, right? It was a movie and a book called Beloved that's based upon Margaret Gardner. And the movie is kind of like abstract. It's kind of like can make you think, but the direct horror of the situation lets you know just how bad chattel slavery was and how much people did not want to go back. Right. Eventually, um, she had went back into slavery where she eventually died, and her daughter died as well. And it's just one of these stories that just stick with you. And I'm saying, like, it's all in reference to the Fugitive Slave Act, where U.S. Marshals, right, that is state agents, were willing to travel and basically kidnap people under the legalities of the system. So when you look at ICE and you look at the 14th Amendment, you are also looking at the legalities that then inspire humans to act in the most senseless ways. A person been living in this country for 20, 30, 40 years can get snatched away from everything just because they don't got no paperwork. And then you got to start to just examine the people who are actually enforcing these rules. Like, where the fuck is your paperwork? You are a birthright. It's no European that is not a birthright citizen at their core, because literally you're a European. You can trace your lineage back to Europe or to wherever the fuck. So what you have within this system and always have been at the institutional level is big time projection. So I was thinking like, okay, now that I got this property thing down, I then reflect back to the 13th Amendment, and they like, oh, that amendment freed the slaves. Congratulations. Everybody start clapping. Juneteenth. Yay, we're free. But did they change the status of the people from property to person? Or did they just free them and keep the same status? Y'all understand what I'm trying to say? How crazy that is? Like, fuck freeing me from slavery if you're not going to change my status. So the 13th Amendment is counterintuitive to Black Revolution when you label every Black person as a freed slave. Y'all don't see how it worked because these people operate at such a deep, dark level, you can't even begin to think like this. This is where the download is. I was looking at all of this information all wrong for my whole life because I didn't understand that these people, like, you building a building of racism, you got schematics, you got blueprints. They willing to go the long mile because even if the people today don't understand, like, I'm talking about the colonizer people, I didn't do this, I didn't enslave you guys. That's what's crazy to me, that these people could create something that they could be dead and gone and this shit still be so prevalent where, you know, we twerking in traffic on top of F-150s and things of that nature. The tricky language in the Section 1 of the 13th Amendment is the result of the cowardly compromise of the victorious slavery opposing patriotic North that allowed the defeated slavery loving traitorous South to co author the amendment. Y'all not even really processing this shit. They free, but let me get my 1-2 off though, my boy, because they can't just be free. Like, these niggas just can't be free. They can't just be like, you just gonna give them rights and just freedom to exist, nigga? Come on now. Like, come on, North. Take a little bit of shit away. Like, come on now. They can't just be free. So Black people gonna celebrate the 13th Amendment and it did nothing. It made the shit worse. Because now we under the illusion of freedom, but we have not changed our status from property to person. For hundreds of years, niggas is just going to be property and we gods. And it don't matter. It don't matter what you have, what you don't have, what you got, what you don't got. You still a god. That's what Gnostic Kabbalah teaches. If you are alive, you can receive from the Most High. At any moment, you could be 50, 60, 70, girl, boy, poor, rich, fat, skinny. You can receive from the Most High. It is a spiritual thing. And those co-authors in Congress incredibly included the former Confederate vice president, 4 former Confederate generals, 5 former Confederate colonels, 6 former Confederate cabinet officers, and 58 former Confederate Congress members. That explains everything. Because the 13th Amendment in 1865 allowed for slavery and involuntary servitude. The South immediately created the Black Codes. So we gonna free the slaves, and immediately we going to hit y'all with more legalese, more paperwork that says that you are Black and you are property and you will never be free. Those codes criminalize recently, quote unquote, free Blacks by creating and selectively enforcing vagrancy. That means if I'm walking down the street, I can be a vagrant, or if I don't got no money, when you Black and you ain't got your shit together, that's a crime. How many black men do you see downtown with nowhere to go? Nothing to do. How many black youth in your community don't have shit? Ain't never going to have shit, and you worried about the crime. You better be. It's going to drive you there. I'm telling you. Loitering, existing, curfew, being out at certain times. Black people were criminalized for existing because they can be experimented on. They can do the Tuskegee. uh the guy who did the started the OBGYN through practicing on slave women, he can do that like Little Flip, because you are nothing but property under law, and there is no court that's going to say, hey man, don't be doing that to those people. They're not people, they're property. Oh, go ahead, go crazy then. If a black person come on your feed and say, oh man, my uncle died, motherfuckers might hit you with a RIP. Let a motherfucker come on there and say they dog died. Niggas gonna get on there and start crying on video like, man, I can't believe this. We know these motherfuckers care more about their dogs than black life. I'm not the only person that have observed that shit. Or maybe I am, because I am weird. Niggas start talking about their dogs so compassionately and so lovingly. I didn't even know you had it in you. I didn't know you had it in you to love like that. Because you going to sit in front of me and act like lynching have never been a thing. They also created and selectively enforced laws that made it illegal for blacks to refuse exploitive and abusive so-called jobs. That's slavery right then and there. When you working at an abusive so-called job just to make ends meet, that's slavery. If you don't know what it is that you want to do, it's billions of people in this world. You can figure out a way, a niche for yourself, a lane for yourself, settle in that lane, get better, educate yourself, grow, build up a business, do your accounting, whatever the case may be. If you say, fuck it, I'm going to just work at Amazon, that's slavery. And the thing about a job is that it will completely wipe you out from your purpose. Yes, you got money. Yes, you financially stable, but you are not mentally stable. You're not spiritually stable. Cut the shit out. Yes, you got a job. Yes, you got money, but the shit you got to do for 8 hours a day is killing you. And when you get home, you eat and you go to fucking sleep. You have made no progress spiritually because you're too fucking tired. That's slavery. You don't even understand that you can just live and be free and exist, that this planet, this country is yours. If black people really wanted to make traction, they would listen to this video and they will all get into the law room and study and change their status from property to person and then go in their courtrooms and fight. Because now they don't got a leg to stand on legally, but they don't have to do shit for you because you are property. They're never going to give you reparations to property. If you do not have status, that means you are a slave. That means you are due reparations. If you are dark skinned, that's all that matters. In like hood, you need DNA, you need background records. Nigga, they put you in bondage based on a fucking paper bag. The fuck is you talking about? I don't need to look up shit. Hood, I've been doing my research. I've been in my family background. I don't give a fuck about that shit. I don't care about nothing of their paperwork. I'm not going to free myself with their paperwork. And that is the paperwork that they use to bond you, for you to look at some shit and say, Rosetta Walker, slave, And that instituted and crystallizing your being was slavery within itself, because she was never that. You ain't gonna find nothing in they court systems, in they paper mache. I don't even know what you call that shit, the niche or whatever the fuck. You going through all these fucking lines of data. Fuck that shit. It's already yours. And to get you in a lower level position, they ain't never have to do that shit. All they did was psychology. So how do you fight back? Psychologically. When you begin to understand this stuff at a spiritual level, you got to also understand this at a legal level, and you have to organize and you have to fight back. They know that you don't know this. They know that you don't know anything in reference to your status. They know that you just going. It's like my kid, right? If y'all ever have kids and you discipline them and they start crying, like that's all you got. All you got is crying, nigga. That crying shit don't work. That's how they treat us. They're gonna do injustice. We're gonna cry, and they're gonna look at you like that don't matter, nigga. You gotta get your paperwork up to the point where you understand your status and everybody understands their status. There is no secret knowledge. And the problem with all of this shit is that niggas, if ever a nigga did know what I'm talking about in this live, guess what they did? They charged $4,000 for a private course. So only you and your niggas could change your status while the majority of us stay on the outside looking in. That's how black people do it. So until they open up the door, until we all begin to collectively understand ourselves under law, what we are, and then change it under law, and we're all just like, we're not even going to argue with you. We're just going to go to the courtroom. Let's deal with this legally. When we file civil injunctions in reference to the fact that my daddy is a white man. My granddaddy named John Anthony III. John Anthony III from Germany. He a plantation owner. That's my grandfather, nigga. What the fuck is we talking about? That's my granddaddy. He died. I get access to some of that plantation, nigga. What are we saying? If your granddaddy is a white slave owner, you got money, nigga. That's what they don't want you to learn or know. Mama, I love you, but this ain't about you right now. Who is my daddy? Who my great granddaddy? He was a plantation owner? All right, let's run it. Civil injunction file. Millions of black people are filing civil injunctions due to the fact that they have an ancestor that is a white slave owner. And now they're petitioning millions against the goddamn United States government. You ain't never seen black people work out. You ain't never seen black people wake up, because black people have never changed their status from property to person. We ain't never seen it yet. Black people still sleep. We still lazy. We still don't give a fuck. We would rather have a Benz, a nice house, and a light-skinned girl. That's all we want. And if blacks violated any of those or similar black codes, they went to prisons that convict leased them to 365 24/7 labor. Sounds like slavery to me. And this is post the 13th Amendment. So I started thinking, okay, Civil War, they free the slaves, but then the black codes. So the slaves is free, but they don't got shit. They don't know who they are. They just migrating places. They just in a group of niggas just trying to figure it out. And they just trying. Right? And then white people say, guess what we gonna do, y'all? They like, what we gonna do? We about to give these motherfuckers hell, nigga, we about to go crazy on these niggas. We about to start hanging these niggas. It's not a normal thing, y'all. Lynching ain't some shit that happened in Rome or Africa or Spain, nigga. It's these goddamn Caucasians in this country that got mad that we was getting some level of rights. So it's a group of black people, right? Just chilling. And a group of white people come find one black person and hang the fuck out of them. And this shit is just happening. You don't know when it's going to happen. Like, this is called mob rule. This is from, nigga, 1860 to 1920. You ain't never heard about this shit. You don't know what was niggas doing from 1860 to 1920. Catching hell, so much hell that we don't even want to talk about it. Niggas will wake up and be like, all right, in 1965, Martin Luther King was fighting for civil rights. Wait, where did niggas go from slavery? Like, niggas went from slavery to Martin Luther King was in the chat. Lynching is an extrajudicial killing by a group. It is often most used to characterize informal public executions by a mob in order to punish an alleged or convicted transgressor or to intimidate others. In the United States, where the word lynching likely originated, lynchings of African Americans became frequent in the South during the period after the Reconstruction era, especially during the nadir of African American race relations. The lowest part. This is where you get movies like Rosewood from. 12 Years a Slave. Like and this is why within the paradigm of 14th Amendment, like repealing this, I don't know what within the language do you alter within, let's just say, like, do you reclassify black people when you restructure it so you don't have to like edit it, the amendment again? Or do you keep it exactly the same and you repeal the entire amendment and act like the amendment don't exist? And we in general just live in a world that's ran by, military. Which, like, when you look at all of the things that's happening with ICE, it's no different. It's a group of people, it's extrajudicial. There's no court saying Hector Ramirez is a threat to society. These people committing no crime. And it's a group of people that's terrorizing and intimidating people. So in places like Texas and California, these motherfuckers is afraid to come outside. That's intimidation. And black people act like black people don't even know that all of these particular tactics and ways to deal with migrants is how they would deal with us. The nadir of American race relations was the period in African American history in the history of the United States from 1877 to the early 20th century, when racism in the country, and particularly anti-Black racism, was more open and pronounced than it had ever been during any period in the nation's history. even more pronounced and open than slavery, because slavery wasn't as bad as after slavery when they started having the legal protection to whoop ass. They don't need you to be slaves when they have the whole entire constitution framed into turning you into property, meaning you can do what you want to do unless it disturbs me, unless I don't want you to do it. You are property, you are limited. And it's like, well, that happened in the past, but we don't know this. We don't talk about this. It's not a normal thing for us to even say, meaning that you got to ask yourself why. Why? You got to keep asking yourself why. Why is this even happening? And that why is like the churning of the cosmic ocean that begins to alchemize the reality of what you should be doing now today. African Americans lost access to many of the civil rights which they had gained during the Reconstruction. Now, then you have to think. We went from slavery for 400 years. That's 1863. That they did the Emancipation 68 from 1863 from 1863 to 1877. Black people had managed to become senators, House of Representatives, create black towns in a manner of 14 years. No, you're looking at a free black society that had been thriving for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And the nadir of American race relations between 1877 and 1920 is the destruction of the empire of the Moorish Empire. Let me be correct in that this is a complete and total destruction of what people have built over hundreds of years, because simultaneously to slaves, we have free blacks. And then 1877 and 1920 was the destruction of that paradigm, to now the facts come into 1920, into 1960 civil rights. Y'all all was slaves. Y'all all are coming out of slavery. No, we're all coming out of the nadir of American race relations, where the Ku Klux Klan and groups like it controlled the country. There was no phones, there was no cars. So organization was key. And the problem that black people have in reference to racism, we don't have the capacity to think like this. We can't organize and create a system of oppression towards another group when we want to enjoy art. We can't be so hypersensitive and focused on another group of people. So therefore, when we are in our groups and we are building what is this called, the Black Wall Street and Rosewood and things of that nature, we're just in our bliss. We don't understand that there is a system that's pinpointing when we reach certain plateaus, come take that shit down. Anti-black violence, lynching, segregation, legalized racial discrimination, and expressions of white supremacy all increased from 1877 to 1920. And that was something that was just like, damn. I mean, I've heard these things before, but in the context of figuring out why, because we are property or we are legally stated as property, and this is why the overall psychosis and the overall approach to this whole thing is to keep us under that level of consciousness. So I don't know where Donald Trump stands on race relations. I mean, if I was to go with the public sentiment, he is a racist. But if I'm also to go with the conspiracy world, where he's an advocate for African Americans, even before he was a president, he had been on record and speaking to how black people were the true Native Americans and things of that nature. So I'm waiting for how all of this plays out. But the reason why I did this video is because I want to keep track of any type of movement within the 14th Amendment over these next years and see how it turns out. And I hope that in doing videos like this, we could begin to wake up as a people, as family, and correct our status because we are not property. We are people. And we just need to understand that we can win this war when we understand that it is a war with ourselves first. And once we figure out just the just how it just normally lays out, that's our birthright. That is our inheritance. That is our prosperity. So we don't have to do no real work other than figuring out who we are and legalize it. And don't be three-fifths of a person within court because they're not going to hear you, but be a whole person in court, be a sovereign person at court, and understand like your sovereignty is greater than citizenship. Because we are aboriginal, indigenous to this country. We are not native to this country. Native Americans are the same as Europeans. They have the same DNA strand, and it has been documented that they have migrated over here from the Bering Strait from the north to the south. We, on the other hand, have been here from the south to the north. Okay. So understand who you are, do the knowledge, you know what I'm saying? And life is to be lived and to be learned and not to be in a space where you just existed materially. Okay. It's time to wake up. On June 27th, the U.S. Supreme Court voted 6-3 to lift temporary blocks on President Donald Trump order ending birthright citizenship for the children of parents who are in the country temporarily or without legal authorization. The ruling did not comment on whether Trump's order was constitutional or not, only that the federal judge who blocked it likely exceed the equitable authority that Congress has granted to federal courts. The constitutionality of the change will still be argued in lower federal courts. And so that's what we'll keep track of. However, Trump was quick to claim the decision as a win. This morning, the Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law, and striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal function of executive branch. So it seems as though Trump is working hard to repeal this 14th Amendment. He's very excited about it, but you got to understand everybody have a plan, everybody trying to work shit out. So we have to, at this level, observe, understand how things is working out, but at the same time, do our due diligence on how to correct our status, and also understanding the slave codes and the black codes and the Constitution that explicitly identify melanated men and women as property. And if that sit right with your soul, keep shit the same. That don't sit right with my soul, and the impetus is now to change and move forward. For all this being said, please support my businesses, whiterabbitpsych.com. It is the weekend, so all orders are 25% off. We ship daily, so if y'all want fast shipping, high quality products, let us know. If y'all have any questions, DM me. Any questions in reference to legality, safety, things of that nature, Feel free to ask questions. We have a contact form. We have many worksheets and things to assist your psychedelic journey. So you're just not simply taking psychedelics and getting high, but you able to go deep within yourself, solve problems, reach intentions, things of that nature, whether you want to do microdosing or macrodosing. White Rabbit Psych is the standard. And if you're not into that, but you still want to support the content, please feel free to blow up my Cash App. It is Hood Mystic, $ Hood Mystic 38, and that is Cash App. Appreciate all the support. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like the video, share this video, comment any other historical things you want to deep dive or talk about in reference to African Americans figuring out who they truly are at the deepest spiritual, mental, and emotional levels. But with all that being said, I'm about to hit this gym up. It's 1:25. I need to get there before 3 and lock in. All right. So make sure you locked in, focus, knowing what's good for you. And I will see y'all all in the next video. Peace to the tribe, peace to the collective. It's Hood. Peace.
You are now tapped in with Hood in the Morning. Call in now.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. See, if that's not the realest shit in the world.
The Shift Report with the Hood Mystic, where shift happens.